Continuation of the Heliotrope by Jeremiah Struxilius. Chapter 2. In what way and for what reason the will of God permit this or that? Here, the great part of men fall into the most miserable error, since with them the divine permission scarcely differs from human, insomuch as it rests in idleness, doing nothing, and does not restrain those who wish to act, even though it can. From this one error countless evils spring. In consequence of this we rush one upon another, and as though we were the artifices of every misfortune and the authors of every evil, we mutually assail one another with tongue and hands and teeth, as if God all the while were an indifferent spectator in our quarrels, and allowed the most grievous acts of injustice when he could prevent them. This is the very seed plot of all disorders, and for the purpose of uprooting it, I proceed to lay down 3 points to consider in every divine permission. The first is the will of permitting, the second, the cause of permission, the third, the will which cooperates with that which is permitted. 1. To understand this, I must repeat that there are 2 kinds of evil. The first comprising those things which cause vexation, pain, loss, disgrace, such as poverty, imprisonment, disease, banishment, and death, which are not to be called evils so much as bitter medicines administered by the divine hand. The second, comprising those things which are properly called evils as sin. The former kind God truly wills either for the punishment of the wicked, as St. Augustine says, see above, chapter 1:6, or for the correction of his children. The latter God cannot be said to will, but to permit. For since God truly wills all things which truly exist, for by his hand all things are, and without it nothing exists, sin, which is improperly said to exist, he cannot will but permits. But since God most clearly foresees all things that will be, he could easily prevent whatever he wills to prevent. Since, however, he does not permit numberless things, we must conclude that God, by his own most just will from eternity, willed and so decreed to permit them. God then suffers anything to be done, not through being unwilling, but through willing it. Men indeed permit many things which they are either unable to prevent, or which they certainly would prefer not to be done. But not so the supreme ruler of all things. There is, therefore, in God a will of permitting, which I have set down as the first point under the head of permission. And now the question arises, why God should will to permit sin, or what is the cause in God of this permission? Never certainly would such infinite goodness permit so great wickedness in the world, unless it could thence produce greater good, and turn to salvation things which were devised for destruction. God permitted the jealousy of his brethren to exercise its malice against innocent Joseph. But with how great good was this permission, not merely to his parents and brethren, but to the whole land of Egypt. God permitted guiltless David to be harassed with the most cruel injuries by wicked Saul, but it was to the greatest advantage of David himself and the entire kingdom of Israel. God permitted Daniel most unjustly accused to be cast into the den of lions, but it was to his own great good and that of many others. But why do I mention such as these? God permitted his own son to be crucified by murderers, but his permission was for the ineffable good of the whole human race. And so from every divine permission there flow the greatest increase to the divine glory, and the richest blessings to the human race. Hence the goodness of God and his mercy, hence his bounty and power, hence his providence, hence his wisdom and justice shine forth in a way which is altogether wonderful. Hence it is that the courage of many grows, the constant thickens, rewards are multiplied, and crowns of victory are increased. And how worthy of wonder does divine providence show itself in these daily permissions? For what great thing is it if you have produced good from good, But if it is great indeed if you have produced good from evil. Anyone can be a pilot in a calm sea, as the saying is. It requires no great skill. When the wind is favorable, the ship stout, the sea calm, the stars shining brightly, and the rowers well used to their work, to reach the harbor already in sight. But when the winds are raging, the sight dismantled, the sky thundering, pirates lurking around, the rowers unskilled in their work, and the stars hidden from sight. Still to reach the wished-for harbor. This, in truth, is a feat to be admired in a pilot. As such is God in his permissions. By means of seeming contraries he conducts to a happy end. By means of so many sins of men he advances his own glory. In such accumulation of wickedness, he causes his own dear ones to shine the more conspicuously under God's guidance. Acts of fraud turn to the advantage of the person who has been deceived. Vexations and injuries add strength to the vexed. The wickedness of so many abandoned men strengthens the piety of others and preserves them from perishing. And where many are thought to be utterly swallowed up, they emerge again. The dungeon and chains open for Joseph the way to an exalted throne of dignity. The envy of his brethren was of more service to him than the kindness of all the world besides. The treachery of Saul conferred on David a kingly crown. The den of lions raised Daniel higher than any courtiers or kings could have done. From the cross Christ passed to paradise. From all of it he ascended to the throne with the Father. But if God did not permit sins, it did not ordain what he permitted, and did not by his ordinance turn them into good, we should have difficulty in recognizing the avenging justice of God. But in this way we are taught lessons of deeper wisdom, and are constrained to confess a most wonderful order and connection of causes, by which so many blessings emerge at length from evils of such magnitude. There are therefore manifold causes for the divine permission, and this was the second point.